Hello, everyone. I thought since we weren't having class today, I'd just do a quick little recording talking about out of home advertising. So let's get started. So I want to start with this. You can tell that this is the golden arches that are not actually golden. And I saw this in Sedona last year, or actually in April of 2025 when I went there. And it's the only place in the country where the golden arches are not golden. And this is because there are strict regulations in this one area of Sedona, Arizona, that do not allow colors other than earth tones and this turquoise color. So the whole McDonald's is done in this color scheme. And from an advertising perspective, I think it's really interesting because McDonald's could have very easily put their foot down and said, no way, that goes against our branding standards. But they didn't. They accommodated this. And some of you may know that in Knoxville, Tennessee, at one time, the McDonald's that was on the strip by the University of Tennessee was done in orange and white versus red and white. So there are times when branding does get changed in order to fit criteria of building standards. But I want to show you a billboard that nearly stopped me in my tracks because it was such a wild billboard to see. This billboard is outside McCaysville, Georgia, and I was driving on this little back road when I saw it, and I was super shocked by it. I thought it was very creative, and obviously it's very memorable. It's for McCaysville Drug and Gun, and their slogan is refills or reloads. And I realized that this may be a controversial take, but I did think, wow, that does encompass what they are selling at this location. From a design perspective, I want to note that this is not a good design. It's too busy. The hierarchy is off. What do you look at first? It doesn't follow the Z pattern that is most successful in design. And also from a text amount perspective, it is also not good. However, it used a slogan that's creative, and the gun next to the pills is wild and attention grabbing. And in general, it's just something that I will probably never stop thinking about. Now, I want you to know that out-of-home ads are more than just billboards, but it's often the ones, or billboards are often the ones that we think of when we think of out-of-home ads. But let's go ahead and look at a few other out-of-home ad options. Out-of-home ads are essentially any ads that are not inside your house, by the way. I felt like I should have started with that. So I'm going to show you a whole bunch of airport ads because there are so many different styles of airport ads. So on the left-hand side here, you can see that we have just like a traditional backlit diorama style advertisement. Now, this is one that's considered a PSA, a public service announcement. The Why We Fly, the Pass It On. This is part of a governmental program that places these when an ad spot isn't sold typically, or when they have a spot that they feel like they can do for a lower amount of pay. On the other hand, this is a double ad, and this is something that I hadn't seen a lot of before I went to the Austin airport in Texas. And it is these top-loaded ads. Both ads typically are for the same thing. It's a buyout system. So this is for Delta and specifically, I believe, for their credit card. Now, here's one from the Nashville airport. It makes sense that we have these. This is one of the most common places to see ads, which is by the baggage claim, because they know that they have a captive audience. This is a longer form one, but it's very large. It's very effective. This one cost around $2,000 for a 4 to 6 week run, according to the Nashville Airport website. So I thought this one was really good. It has a good picture. It's obvious what it talks about. Only one place makes Jack drop on by, advertising something close-ish to the Nashville Airport. And here's another one also from the... Actually, no, this one is not from the Nashville Airport, I don't think. I can't remember where I took this one. It's not a great photo, just heads up. But this is more of a square style one, as you can tell. And I just thought it was, an interesting one because there are so many different sizes. This last ad I'm going to show you from the airports most recently is back in Nashville. I did think this was a really creative use of space. and just shows you how airports and many different locations are trying to use their space effectively when it comes to where can we offer ad placement that fits in with the architecture that people are going to notice, and that's going to be something a little bit different that's going to stand out and be memorable. And I think this is a really great example of having the guitar going up the stairs here, as you can see, for Gibson. So I thought that one was really good. So let's go ahead using out-of-home media, OOH, basically media that reach prospects outside of their homes. This can include outdoor advertising, bus and taxi cab advertising, subway posters, terminal advertising. They are all part of this broad category. And it really is a broad category. There's more than 100 different types of these. I'm not going to ask you to name all of them, but I do want you to understand what some groups include, which is the billboards, the bus and taxi ads, skywriting, the transit advertising, which can include bus stops, in addition to ads that are on like the side of buses, as well as the ads that are inside of buses. If you've been inside of a bus, you know they often have a rail around the top, and that rail often has advertisements. They also might have more poster style in there as well. Traditionally, it's near, like if it's a city bus where you have to pay, it might be near the payment spot, or it might be in the divider section between the first part of the bus and the part that tends to go up like 1 to 2 stairs. Once again, this slide is just to show you some of the more recent worldwide spending on this type of advertising. And you can see it's broken up into 2 categories, which is digital out-of-home advertising, as well as traditional out-of-home advertising. Traditional is exactly what you think of when you see a billboard that is static, it doesn't move. Or if you see, like in the airports, a static printed piece, versus digital, which is going to be that screen style. You can see that digital, of course, no surprise, has been expanding their reach over the years, but the implementation has been expensive because billboards have to be replaced in order to become digital. There has to be a power source, etc. We see a lot more in the digital advertising space inside of airports. This is a bigger area because they already have that power element, and they've had a little bit more accessibility, which is nice. But I just want you to see these numbers. This is a lot of money being spent. And you can see this has a prediction all the way out to 2028 of what that divide is going to look like. Now, this graphic specifically looks at spending in billions of dollars in the United States. And once again, it's making some predictions. This data comes from 2021, which is not great. It's not the most recent. However, it's more recent than our textbook tends to be. And so you can see, once again, we have predictions all the way out to 2026. I want to go back to some data we had looked at before related to McDonald's, but unfortunately they didn't have the newest data on their ad spending by platform. They just kind of grouped all of it together. And so this is from 2019, so this is before the pandemic, so it's not the most accurate. However, it does give you a good breakdown of how McDonald's is spending their money on different forms of advertising. And you can see outdoor advertising, which encompasses out of home, is $70.7 million for McDonald's. That is a lot of money. I think we can all agree to that. And you can see it's more than double radio, and it's even about a little less than half of what is spent on digital. And I think this is no surprise. You are going to see a drop-off after the pandemic because people weren't out and about. So we did see less out-of-home advertising spend at that point. But I do think it's really bouncing back. Now, this is the graphic from the book. And I do think it is a little bit old, but it does show kind of a breakdown of out-of-home media spend traditionally, with bulletins being the biggest at 35%, sheet posters 22%, in-store sports stadiums. Now, sports stadiums has gotten a lot bigger. This number has increased because there are so many good opportunities there, and because they realize that there is more to be sold. So I do want to note that. Bus shelters, I think, is a small percentage because in the United States, we do not have the public transportation of other countries. In other countries, this number is going to be a lot higher because there's more public transportation and there's more space for that. Here, we mostly see this in larger cities, Yes, we have a few bus stop ads here on campus, but in general, it's not that much in comparison to things like billboards, for example. Out-of-home advertising communicates a succinct message to a mass audience quickly and frequently as the low and at the lowest cost of any of the major mediums, which is really nice. In addition, it has seen really steady growth over the years, and part of that is because of the integration of digital technologies. It's also because we are a driving country. People drive everywhere, every day. We sit in traffic. It is the norm. It is the standard in this country, which is a really good opportunity for a captive audience here in the United States when it comes to something they're going to see every single day for a certain amount of time and things they might see over and over if they're having to sit in one spot and there's nothing else for them to really look at. That's that captive audience perspective. So, standardization of out-of-home advertising has been something discussed over the years. In the United States, there are more than 400,000 outdoor ad structures that are owned and maintained from about 3,000 outdoor advertising companies. These are often known as plants, and plant operators find suitable locations, usually concentrated in commercial and business areas. Although that's not always the case, there's lots of rural areas that have billboards, as I'm sure all of us realize. And they lease or buy the property that billboard sits on, acquire the necessary legal permits, and erect structures in conformance with local building codes. They contract with advertisers for poster rentals and post the panels or paint the bulletins. Plant operators also maintain the outdoor structures and keep surrounding areas clean and attractive. This is a critical element. We've all seen this. You've seen the your ad here, your message, but bigger. And we've seen big companies like Clear Channel that own these. Every single one of these has some sort of ad for who owns them, like Lamar, for example. You probably have seen that one too. But there's a lot of strategy that goes into figuring out where not just to place your ad, but where is a good place to even have a billboard and who's going to see it. A little fun story for you. I was living in Alabama and I drove from Montgomery, Alabama to Troy, Alabama 4 to 5 days a week for work. And I was coming home from Troy one day and my car broke down and it wasn't great. And I knew my car was having issues and I was hopeful I could make it home, but I didn't. And so when I called the tow company to come get me, they asked me where I was. And I said, I'm not exactly sure where I am because there's nothing close by. And they're like, well, is there any signage or a mile marker? And I said, well, I'm near the yellow billboard. And they're like, oh, yeah, we know exactly where that is. That billboard had been there for so long because it was owned and maintained by the place that it advertised. And so they knew exactly what I was talking about. So that billboard was a prominent element of this drive. People knew where it was. And so they were able to find me really, really quickly because I was less than a quarter of a mile from that billboard. So that's kind of a silly example, but it's one I had seen every single day. I could see it from where I was sitting in my car, and it was super well known, which was great. I already told you that there are over 100 different types of out-of-home advertising, but some of the ones that are considered the 6 major kinds, according to the Out-of-Home Advertising Association of America, who knew, right, include billboards, street furniture, this includes bus shelters, store displays, urban furniture, like park benches, for example, and kiosk, transit advertising, which includes the buses, subway, and rail, airports, truck sides, taxi displays, and even those wrapped vehicles. I feel like that has fallen by the wayside, but one-time wrapped vehicles were a major way to advertise, and you can still see that in places like Las Vegas, for example. They have these big trucks and wrapped cars that drive around. All they do is advertise. Of course, you are familiar with broadcasts using place-based TVs because we've talked about that a ton. And it's not just ones that you see in your house. Of course, stores will have these, schools have them, bars have them, and even gas stations have those little TVs you might have noticed on the pumps. And then, of course, radio. And my favorite, which is alternative, which I think is sorry, it's a little cut off here, which is like such a bold, big option. This includes elevators, stadiums, anything airborne, shopping malls. It's kind of the catch-all. So you might be asked an exam like to identify the 6 major kinds or 4 of the 6 major kinds. This is what I'm talking about in that question. There are different sizes as well that we can talk about when it comes to buying. So to buy outdoor advertising effectively, the media planner must understand its advantage and disadvantages and the types of structures available to them. So this is giving you some examples: bulletins versus poster panels versus junior posters. So this is just helpful. I want you to read about these independently. I don't have the energy to really go through them right now, but look these up. We'll talk about spectaculars in just 1 minute. These are just a few more examples of some ads that I've seen online and seen in real life over the years. These were just kind of funny ones for The Grinch when it came out a number of years ago. And they were, of course, done in places like Chicago. I've seen windier cities with The Grinch like making snarky comments. I've shown this one before, I believe. But when the Super Bowl was in Atlanta in, I think, 2019, if I remember correctly, they had all these like big stickers on the walls. It was really fascinating. And then these are the plane train doors. I've talked about the one on the right before because I worked on that one. And then on the left, you can see at one time they were using a lot of these spots for universities and doing kind of a good deal on them. They were so expensive, but they're a better deal than typically. So, and it was like near the start of the school year, if I remember correctly. This one comes from your book, Memorable Outdoor Ads. This one was for Lego that blended in with the street, which is kind of fun and creative. So when you're looking at it from a certain angle, it looks like you can see the background there. And of course, it has the Lego ads incorporated. Spectaculars. These are not super common. It's really expensive. We see them mostly in big cities like New York and Hong Kong and places like that. They're very expensive. They tend to be much more elaborate. They have animation often or movement on them, kinetic type, stuff like that. And they just really are fun and overwhelming sometimes. The one on the top right, it's kind of hard to see. You might have to bring your phone or your computer a little bit closer. But this one was when Angel Reese, the basketball player, got her deal with Reebok. This was really exciting because it was a year or two after the NIL rules had changed. And she'd been working with Reebok for a while. After that, July 2021, I believe that's when the law came into effect that collegiate athletes could have sponsorships. That she did a couple years after that, she did a long-term partnership with Reebok, and part of that was getting an ad in Times Square, which was really fun and exciting. So this is just a screenshot from that ad on the top right-hand side. I was hoping to include the Las Vegas Sphere this time in this lecture, but I just didn't get a chance to add it. But if you've seen, I believe it's the Cheetos Doritos ad that they just released at the Sphere. Really, really cool, really interesting. And another fun use of course, outdoor advertising. So how does this work when it comes to actually doing the buying? According to the measurement of daily estimated circulation, this is often called the DEC, the basic unit of sale for billboards or posters is 100 gross rating points daily, or 100 showing. That's kind of what they're termed as. So buying 100 gross rating points does not mean the message will appear on 100 posters. I want that noted. It basically means the message will appear on as many panels as needed to provide a daily exposure. Now, this is theoretically equal to the market's total population. So 100% essentially of your population. Now, is that what actually happens? No, not really. A showing of 100 gross rating points achieves a daily reach traditionally about 88% of the adults in a market over a 30-day period. So this is not every single day. This is over typically a 30-day period. But basically, they want one rating point to equal 1% of a particular market's population. This just does not typically happen. The DEC is based on estimates of traffic on a daily basis. So that's where that gets to that. And in 2009, which I know is a long time ago, the Outdoor Advertising Association of America, which I mentioned previously, and the Traffic Audit Bureau developed the Eyes on Impression. So that's that EOI mentioned at the bottom of this slide. Method of measuring reach and frequency. Reach and frequency, no matter what platform it's on, is always kind of a guesstimate, to be honest with you. And the main factor that differentiates DECs from EOIs is the estimation of traffic on a daily basis versus estimation of seers of an ad on a weekly basis. So the one on the bottom is about seers versus the one on the top, which is based on daily traffic. The net effect is twofold. That out-of-home ads is now the only ad medium that tracks viewers of ads rather than just potential to see the ads, and that two, the frequency of out-of-home ads has been drastically reduced over a monthly period where the reach difference is, negligible basically. Now that you know some of the terms, what does it come down to when it comes to buying? And I think, like many things, location, to be real with you. This is what determines where you should buy, when you should buy, how long you should buy. Because you want to think about, where's the location of your business? Or does it even have a specific location? Or is it like a TV show so anyone with a TV can log into it and see, or anyone that has cable or whatever platform you're on can log in to see it? Is it going to be somewhere where people are going to spend a lot of time stopped, so they're going to have a lot of time to look at it? Or is it going to be in a location where people are going by it really, really fast every day, so that repeat observance is really critical to get all the information? But really, as in real estate, location is everything in outdoor advertising. Advertisers want more saturation. Can increase the number of posters or purchase better locations to achieve 200 or even 300 GRPs per day. Of course, today, outdoor companies use global positioning systems, so GPS, to give the exact location of particular boards using satellite technology. Some outdoor companies even provide digitized video of their locations so the buyer can see the actual board in the environment which is located, which is honestly kind of cool in my opinion. Barcoding technology allows materials to be tracked, posted, and authenticated all by computer, which I think is also really cool. And of course, computerized painting on flexible vinyl guarantees a high quality, high resolution, faithful reproduction of the advertiser's message, regardless of the method. Of course, there's also the LED technology on billboards. Because LED screens can change instantly, though, advertisers can connect better with consumers by displaying up-to-the-minute messages, but it also means you might be competing if it's a rotating system. And geofencing takes the notion one step further. I should have mentioned the location-based advertising. Sorry, I was skipping around my notes. The newest entry into out-of-home advertising is location-based advertising. Location-based advertising at the broadest levels, targeting audience within well-defined geographical boundaries with messages that are highly relevant to those areas, right? So like that one for the Grinch was a location-based advertising because it looked different than the ads in San Francisco and the ones in New York because it was specific to that area. And they can become even more defined than that if you're only wanting to target an even smaller population. Like if you were in Chicago and you were only targeting like Lincoln Park residents, for example. And then geofencing takes the location-based advertising even further by taking advantage of technology such as smartphones that can be identified and communicate with the billboard or the location via Bluetooth or other localized transmitting devices. Okay, that was a long time on that slide. Thanks for bearing with me. Here you can see in places like Los Angeles, there are just so many billboards, honestly. So that's a lot of competition. It might be like, oh, great opportunity. There's so many places to put it. But it also means people are inundated with billboards all the time. Now, there have been rules and regulations and changes over the years. And in 1965, we had the Highway Beautification Act that controls outdoor advertising on U.S. interstates, highways, etc., and other federally subsidized highways. And basically, people thought they were ugly. So there were complaints about outdoor advertising. They were ugly, that they were distracting from the driving, etc. And so over 700,000 billboards were removed between when that act went into place in 1965 and 1991, which I think is kind of fascinating. And of course, each state regulates outdoor activities, administers and enforces outdoor advertising permit programs through their Department of Transportation. And some states, like Vermont, for example, they prohibit billboards altogether. And I think I mentioned earlier this semester, I went to Greece. I was really surprised that there were no billboards there, or very few. And it's because were also new rules that went into place in 2010 that got rid of a lot of outdoor advertising. Just a few things about transit advertising, because I'm going to ask you about this on the exam, is it targets the millions of people who use commercial transportation. This includes buses, subways, elevated trains, commuter trains, trolleys, and airlines. For places like us here in Murfreesboro, airline travel is our biggest one. But even when you go to Nashville, you can see the increase in transportation advertising. So, and this could be while you're on these, or as a pedestrian, or even a car passenger looking. A lot of people do not consider this a major medium because we are a car society here in the United States. But it is becoming more attractive to national advertisers because it is really cost effective. And of course, transit advertising comes in a variety of formats. Transit shelters, so bus stations, platforms, terminal posters, inside cards and outside posters on buses and taxis, extenders. I mentioned these earlier, so just another way to look at it. There's lots of ways that people can be creative with these. So this one example from the book, this photo looks horribly stretched out, but this is one where they made use of like the little accordion center of the bus in the actual design for this flexible toothbrush, which feels like very old school, to be honest with you. Let's see. The unit of purchase is considered a showing when it comes to transit advertising, also known as a run or a service. A full showing, which is that 100 showing, means that one card will appear in each vehicle in the system. And space may also be purchased as a half, so that is that 50 showing or even quarter showing as another opportunity. Usually you're going to do this to control cost in all reality. And also you might be experimenting with different types of advertising. The unit of purchase is a showing, as I already mentioned, and it can be known as a run or service. A full showing means that one card will appear in each vehicle of the system. And we have something called special buys, which is what this is about. So in some cities, advertisers can gain complete domination by buying the basic bus, all the inside space on a group of buses, which is kind of fun, but it can be annoying as well. For an extra charge, pads of business reply cards or coupons, often called take ones, can be affixed to the interior ads for passengers to request more detailed information, send in application blanks, or receive some other benefits. Kind of the new version of this, of course, is a QR code to get that information. We see a lot less tear-offs. Like even I was at Waffle House a couple weeks ago, and I noticed that now for the application, they used to have tear-offs. And in a few, they do still have the tear-offs to do the applications, but a lot of times now they have the QR codes that take you to the website. Then you also have special outside buys as well, which is this next section. Some transit companies will offer Busorama signs, jumbo full-color transparencies, backlit by fluorescent tubes and running the length of the bus, which is really fun and attractive looking typically. A single advertiser may also buy a total bus. All the exterior space, including the front, rear, sides, and top, will be an advertisement. I saw that this summer with the Jurassic Park, or this past summer with the Jurassic Park movie. I don't remember what it's called, like maybe Jurassic World or something. And it was a total bus takeover, had the wrap on it. It was the only ad you saw in the interior and the exterior. Of course, New York subways have been running brand trains, which include all the subway cars in a particular corridor for many years. We don't see that too often. It's probably something you're less familiar with because we don't have subways here. But if you go to New York, you might notice this, although it's not super common. And then, of course, each of the 9 monorail trains and 7 stations incorporate that sponsor as well in New York typically when they do that. And then there's, of course, immersive advertising as well. Just another example of transit advertising here. All right, let's talk a little bit about product packaging, because I think product packaging is one of the most interesting areas of out-of-home ads, because a lot of times we don't think about it as an ad, but upward of 70% of buying decisions are made at point of purchase. And oftentimes that decision could persuade us based on the packaging, the messaging on it, the look of it. So I think it's important for us to talk about it. It is also considered the last ad a customer sees. And I will ask you about that in the exam, so please note that. So what's included in product packaging? It includes the design, the color, the shape, the labeling, the materials. All of us have seen something that is a really attractive packaging, and you may be more susceptible to packaging than others are. I am. I love a well-packaged product. And when I was in like middle school and they had the like flip lip glosses, I will never forget. I wanted one so badly because of the packaging of it. It was sleek, it was cool, it was fun, and it was what convinced me that I wanted that lip gloss, even though it was just like any other lip gloss I already had. So that's really important. And there's lots of reasons why product packaging is important. It protects the product, but it also provides information, and it's just another way to promote your item. All right, these are such old examples from your book, to be honest, and there's so many better ones out there. But the final messaging point prior to purchase occurs when the consumer encounters the product. And when things look fun or cool or on brand, people are more likely to buy them. That's the essence of this. Of course, there's more to product packaging than just the looks. We've had growing concerns about environmental issues in packaging. You may see things now like this packaging is entirely made of recycled materials. That's part of the public's growing concern for the environment. I did think it's very interesting, some data for you, that about 5 or so years ago, global companies spent about $975 billion on packaging, which is crazy. But of course, everything has to have packaging. So, of course, it's more than just another space to just waste. It's where you can put a planned message, because packaging influences the product message, as well as it just has this look to it that makes people interested in buying a product or not. Maybe you bought something in ugly packaging and been like, oh, it has ugly packaging, but I want this product so much, or vice versa. Maybe it was really great packaging and it turns out to be a crap product. You're like, dang it, the packaging really got me. Trust me, I have been that person. So packaging encompasses the physical appearance of the container itself, the design, the color, the shape, the labeling, the materials, all of this. And of course, there has been government impact on packaging, because you have seen on food items, you have to have that nutrition information, and as part of the Nutrition Labeling and Education Act of 1990, which you might think to yourself, wow, that was a long time ago. But like, I think it's crazy that it took that long to have some of the laws that we have now. And so oftentimes I just think that that's crazy, because that's not that long ago in the grand scheme of packaging. But buying packaging includes 2 major phases: the concept and production. The conceptual process involves input from 5 major groups. These include consumers, of course, manufacturers themselves, marketing people, consumer advocacy groups at times, and of course, government agency when there needs to be things of importance like nutrition information or on things like alcohol, who can and cannot have this, smoking, what are the dangers of it, etc. And of course, there are always going to be conflicting concerns from these groups that influence the nature and the cost of the packaging. Yeah, and then of course, sorry, I think packaging in general has gotten more creative over the years. This one is from your book, I believe, but this is one of my favorites because it was so popular and so well known. One might call it iconic, but Abercrombie using their bags to have their half naked models on them, like it was just so 1990s, so early 2000s. These bags were everywhere. So in class, I would ask you, does anyone know what the Bloomingdale's bag looks like, or what it says? So you can pause if you want to shout out your guess or not. But I'm going to show you the next slide, of course. They're very well known for their little brown bags, or their medium brown bags, or their large brown bags. They all say blank, so the size brown bag. These are, of course, very nice little bags because they are recycled typically. But I recently noticed something that they were selling at Bloomingdale's. And that is, of course, that you can get a purse, a reusable purse, that literally looks like their shopping bag. Of course, it's probably made from like PVC or something like that. But for just like about $27, you can get this bag, which I think shows you its place in like the popular culture zeitgeist, that it was so well known, so popular. People saved these when they bought something at Bloomingdale's. But they're like, how can we sell this bag in a new format? And this was it. I do like to always ask, like, can you think of other iconic bags out there? I think about things like the Sephora black and white bag, the Victoria's Secret pink and darker pink and lighter pink bag, or pink and white bag. They're just so ingrained. I think about Tiffany and Company, but maybe you can think of one that I don't think about, but it's iconic and it sells your brand product, and sometimes it sells an idea like luxury, for example, or in the case of Abercrombie, sexiness, whatever it is. It sells something besides just the product itself. Of course, product packaging changes over the years. Sometimes this goes by style trends. Sometimes it has a change in packaging materials. Sometimes it just has to do with competitors coming out, what's going to look better on the shelf, all kinds of stuff. There's lots of reasons why packaging should and does change. So one of the more common ones, product alteration or improvement. What I actually realized I didn't put on here that I think should be considered is when the product changes sizes. We've talked about this before with shrinkflation, right? So the packaging often changes. We can go all the way back to the first day of class. Isn't it fun when we work ourselves all the way back around? And when we talked about the Gatorade bottles and they noted the different packaging and the new packaging, the Gatorade bottle had a little waistline, right? The product packaging changed because they were getting rid of some of the product. You were getting less of it. So the packaging had to change to reflect that, of course. And they gave it that little waistline. So full circle moment. Sometimes there might be substitution in packaging materials. This could reduce cost. It could reduce waste. There's lots of reasons for this. Sometimes competitive pressure, which I already mentioned, environmental concerns, increased brand recognition, and damage prevention. Sometimes you may determine that your product isn't getting where it needs to be successfully, unbroken, whatever, because your packaging isn't the right packaging for that product. This happens more times than you would think, actually. And you may be asked on the exam to talk about some of those reasons why product packaging has changed or might change over the years. Or I might show you an example and have you talk about the changes and why the changes might have happened. So for example, this is the RX bar. You might have seen it before. On the left is the old packaging, and on the right is the new packaging. And I think it's interesting because I feel like typically the packaging gets more exciting or more visual over time. And this is one that kind of went the opposite direction. And it's because they really wanted to highlight how their bar was different and how their products are, I don't want to say pure because that sounds like a bad word for it, but they want you to really focus on like what is in this product. And so that was the goal of this, to tell you on the packaging, on the front, exactly what is in it. And they all at the time had no BS at the end. So I did think this was interesting because it went the opposite direction than you would think. Coca-Cola, of course, taking it back around to some of the early days of this class, they've also been really specific about their packaging. And as you know, we talked about this in the very early days, that they wanted for consumers, when they like reached into a cooler, to know the Coca-Cola bottle was a Coke just from the way it felt and the shape of it. This was an example of using packaging as part of their branding from the very beginning. And then in 2009, which I know is a really, really, really long time ago, they wanted to appear more environmentally friendly. So to do that, they created new bottles using less plastics and more plant-based materials. And they advertise that right on the bottle. You can see on this example here versus their previous plastic bottles. I don't spend a lot of time talking about trade show booths and exhibits, mostly because they're just not an area I'm as knowledgeable about. And honestly, I just don't think they're as critical from a forward-facing, customer-facing perspective. But this slide gives you a little bit of information about that. You can pause it, write it down. But basically, every major industry sponsors annual trade shows, exhibitions where manufacturers, dealers, and buyers get together for demonstrations and discussion. And the construction of trade show booths and exhibits has become a major factor in sales promotion plans. And I just went to the journalism high school convention, and for groups like Jostens, that does yearbooks and class rings and all kinds of other like high school graduation stuff. They do college stuff too, though. They have like these really big fancy booths where they like, put down their own floors, and they have a big footprint, and they have all these computers to show you exactly what you can do with the product. This is really big. If you've ever watched Shark Tank, sometimes they'll show you scenes from trade shows where you get to see the product in action. Even though I built booths over the years, it's just not something that I'm like, whoa, it's so critical for us to talk about. But you can pause, you can read this and learn more about it. Once again, this is from your book, you can look it up. But just how do customers learn about trade shows? Once again, I just don't think this is a big area from a consumer-facing perspective. There's all kinds of specialty advertising as well. Many promotional media are difficult to classify because they're tailored to individual needs in all reality. Such supplementary media include specialty advertising directories, and at one time include things like Yellow Pages, which of course we don't use anymore. And of course, there are a lot of emerging alternative media vehicles over the years. This is usually a product of new technology. But an advertising specialty is a promotional product, usually imprinted with an advertiser's name, message, or a logo that is distributed free as part of a marketing communications program. Sorry, every single one of you has seen these before. We give these out as part of the university. I've given these out working for companies. They're just a different way to have something tangible that someone can take with them that has your logo on it so they remember who you are and what you do. This is also different from a premium. Premiums are also promotional products, but they are typically more valuable and usually bear no advertising message, and they're usually just to show you the product itself. We've talked mostly about consumer-facing businesses, but I also mentioned over the weeks business specialties. So these are typically going to be items that one business sells to another business in order for them to do their business. But you can read more about this in your book, In All Reality. I'm sorry, I'm losing energy here on this. Also, I know it's hard to watch this much of a slideshow. Here's some other emerging advertising opportunities. I think it's a little behind the times to say cinema advertising. It's here, it's everywhere, etc. But something I did want to talk about was this type of advertising, which is exhibitive exhibition style. But Lego did this. They came to Nashville earlier this year or earlier in 2025 near Valentine's Day where they had this pop up. This was immersive. It was cool. It was fun. You went through the garden and collected different pieces of Legos. And then at the end, you use those pieces to make a floral bouquet. So these are just some pictures from that. They're all from Instagram, as you can tell. And so here people are putting together their little bouquets. This is what the pop-up looked like. It was really fun. They had other people there. There were tote bags that you got. This is really the future of advertising, in my opinion. This is what people want. It's interactive. It's fun. And, of course, you can take pictures, which makes it super Instagram friendly, which, of course, extends your reach. Another way that you can advertise is on stamps. This, of course, is not as valuable, I think, as it once was. But there was a ban on advertising on stamps, and now that is gone. So just fun fact for you. And last but not least, I want to show you this. OkCupid. This series of billboards. They were all really strange. They all had innuendo on them. So we all know what DTF means. If you don't, you can look it up on Urban Dictionary for your own sake. But in this case, they were like, oh, we're going to just change the end of it. So down to fall head over heels. This was just fun. I just want to show it to you. It's an old campaign now, but just for funsies. I know this is anticlimactic because it's online and not in person, but I hope you enjoyed this semester. I really enjoyed it. Our final exam is Tuesday, December 9th at 8 a.m. Just a few little reminders. It's going to be the same style as your midterm. It's worth 100 points. There'll be multiple choice questions, true, false questions, short answer. You'll get a couple of essay questions, I think 2 to 3 options, but you only answer one of them, and then there'll be a fill in the blank option. If you are registered with the DAC, go ahead and you want to take the exam there. Make sure that you schedule that ASAP so you can get it on the day of our exam and at the appropriate time. If you have any questions about that, you can, of course, email me, reach out to me, and let me know. All right, I know this was long. Thank you, and I hope that you have a great day, and I will see you next Tuesday.